grinding every day. Long hours, no backup, no accountability. That ends now. The Empower Solopreneur Mastermind gives you one simple advantage: a weekly power session that turns isolation into domination. Every Friday morning on Zoom, you'll get real coaching and real feedback to make real moves. Join a group of driven professionals in a program designed for solopreneurs and people working at home. Stop getting stuck. Start scaling. Seats are limited. Lock in yours today at modernobserver.com/empower-mastermind.
A severe winter storm rocks the U.S. Crime hits record lows in 2025. Gold hits all-time highs, and more. Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and here's the news you need to know. More than 200 million people were under winter storm threats this weekend as Storm Fern worked its way from New Mexico and Texas through the Northeast. Snow is expected to continue for the East Coast through this morning. Power outages stayed above 1 million customers on Sunday as Winter Storm Fern dumped heavy ice across the South and Mid-Atlantic, snapping trees onto distribution lines and slowing restoration in the hardest hit areas. The storm underscored how much the grid depends on natural gas, about 40% of U.S. generation, and how quickly tight pipeline deliveries can become a constraint during extreme weather. Temperatures in most areas impacted by Fern are expected to remain below average this week. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said that Democrats would not vote for any spending bill that funds the Department of Homeland Security after the killing of Alex Preddy in Minneapolis this weekend. Funding for more than 3/4 of the federal discretionary budget is set to expire on Friday. The Department of Homeland Security says Preddy was armed and resisted as agents tried to disarm him, while local officials and witness accounts dispute key parts of that version, and the Justice Department is investigating. The commander of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard on Saturday warned that his force is more ready than ever, finger on the trigger, as U.S. warships head towards the Middle East. Tension remains high between Iran and the U.S. in the wake of a continued bloody crackdown on protests triggered by the collapse of Iran's currency. President Trump has said an American armada is heading toward the Middle East and that the U.S. is monitoring Iran closely. Weeks of anti-government protests in Iran have resulted in more than 3,300 deaths following clashes with Iran's security forces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said Sunday that Israel has agreed to a limited reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt under President Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan. In a series of posts on X, Netanyahu's office said the crossing will reopen after the completion of an operation to locate the remains of the final Israeli hostage. The reopening will be limited to pedestrian traffic and remain subject to a full Israeli inspection process. As part of President Trump's 20-point plan, Israel has agreed to a limited reopening of the Rafah crossing for pedestrian passage only, subject to full Israeli inspection mechanism, the Office of the Prime Minister of Israel wrote. President Trump said he would impose a 100% tariff on Canada if Prime Minister Mark Carney completes a trade deal with China. Trump wrote on Truth Social, "If Governor Carney thinks he is going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken." Canadian citizens have expressed support for Trump's actions in protests of Carney's government. A new report shows the United States is seeing a historically low crime rate. The Council of Criminal Justice's annual crime trends report analyzed data from 40 large cities across the country for 13 different crime types, including murder, theft, and drug offenses. Across 31 major U.S. cities, Murder rates declined sharply over the past year, with analysis revealing levels dropping to a more than 100-year low. Murders fell more than 20% in 2025, marking the most significant one-year drop ever and likely the lowest rate since 1900, according to the report. The Council of Criminal Justice called this a once-in-a-generation improvement in public safety. Gold hit a new price record of nearly $5,000 an ounce. Friday, the price of gold was up 8% over the week and 15% since the start of 2026. Investors have been snatching up the precious metal as a hedge against market jolting geopolitical shocks, like this week's spat between the US and Europe over President Trump's push to control Greenland. Plus, declining interest rates eroding returns on government bonds and fears that stocks might be overpriced have made precious metals a more attractive investment. Silver is rallying even harder, with the price of an ounce more than tripling over the year. It rose nearly 14% this week and surpassed $100 for the first time ever Friday. That's the Raw Naked Truth for January 26, 2026. You can catch every episode of the Raw Naked Truth Daily News Brief, as well as our sister podcast, Carnivore Radio, with news analysis and commentary, and the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech. We'll see you next time.